Kurama, the legendary nine-tails fox, is often seen simply as a force of destruction, a powerful demon full of rage and hatred toward humanity. But what if there is more beneath this terrifying exterior? What fuels such deep bitterness? And how did this creature come to view humans as enemies? By exploring Kurama's past and inner world, we uncover a story of pain, loneliness, and distrust, emotions that are deeply familiar to us all. This journey will challenge everything you think you know about this fearsome being, revealing how even the darkest hearts can begin to heal through trust and understanding. The story of Kurama begins in a time long before the events of Naruto, a time when the world was divided and humans and demons lived in constant conflict. Kurama was born into this harsh reality as a being of extraordinary power, feared not only for his strength, but also for the uncontrollable force he represented. To many humans, he was nothing more than a dangerous weapon to be captured and used. This environment of fear and hostility deeply shaped Kurama's identity. From a psychological standpoint, his experience mirrors what humans often feel when trapped in cycles of rejection and isolation. When someone is repeatedly pushed away or misunderstood, their natural response is to build walls of defense, sometimes reacting with anger or resentment as a way to protect themselves. Kurama's existence was marked by imprisonment, not just physically sealed away by powerful forces, but emotionally confined by the rejection of those around him. This created a profound loneliness, a feeling of being trapped both inside his own power and in the lack of acceptance. Psychological studies show that feelings of abandonment and exclusion can intensify emotions like fear and anger, leading to a defensive stance that can be misunderstood as hostility. But Kurama's story is not simply one of anger. Beneath his fierce exterior lies a being shaped by trauma and fear, a creature longing for freedom, understanding, and perhaps even connection. His early encounters with humans were framed by violence and mistrust, planting the seeds of a deep-seated resentment. This resentment is not born out of malice, but as a response to pain and survival. What few realize is that Kurama's story is also about the potential for change. It is a reflection of how even those who seem the most distant and fierce are influenced by their environment and experiences, and how their nature is not fixed but can evolve. Yet, as history has shown, there was a turning point that none could foresee. Something was about to shift in Kurama's path, something that would challenge the very foundations of his being. The moment of rupture in Kurama's story occurs when he is sealed inside Naruto, a young human destined to become a great ninja. For Kurama, this act is not just another confinement, it is a profound shock to his existence. The sudden loss of freedom renews his feelings of mistrust and isolation, deepening the emotional walls he had built over centuries. Internally, Kurama experiences a complex turmoil. On one side, there is the instinct to resist and reject this new bond. On the other, there is an unspoken curiosity about Naruto, a human who, despite their differences, shares his fate. This inner conflict reflects psychological concepts often observed in trauma survivors, the struggle between defensive avoidance and the hesitant beginnings of connection. From the perspective of psychological science, Kurama's initial reaction is understandable. Traumas linked to rejection and confinement can cause an individual to develop hypervigilance, suspicion, and emotional detachment. These are survival mechanisms designed to protect the self from further harm. For Kurama, these feelings manifest as hostility and rejection of Naruto's attempts to connect. However, the situation also introduces an important element: prolonged coexistence. Over time, forced proximity can soften the hardest defenses. Exposure to empathy, patience, and respect can gradually rebuild trust, even in the most guarded hearts. This transformation is subtle and slow. Kurama's perspective begins to shift as he witnesses Naruto's determination, kindness, and resilience. Rather than seeing humans solely as enemies, Kurama starts to recognize the complexity of individuals, that they can be both flawed and capable of great compassion. Psychologically, this stage represents a fragile opening in Kurama's emotional armor. It is a transition from pure survival instincts to tentative engagement with vulnerability. The science of attachment theory helps explain this. Even those with deep emotional wounds can begin to form new bonds when met with consistent care and understanding. Yet, the path is far from easy. Old fears and resentments still surface, causing moments of tension and conflict. This duality adds richness to Kurama's character. He is neither purely good nor bad, but a being shaped by his experiences, capable of both resistance and change. And it is precisely in this delicate balance that everything starts to shift. The foundations laid by distrust begin to crack, making space for a new kind of relationship, one built not on fear, but on mutual respect. As time passes, Kurama's mind begins to reveal new layers of complexity. No longer driven solely by raw anger and resentment, his thoughts and emotions start to organize into a more structured, though still turbulent, state. This evolution reflects a deeper psychological process, one where pain and mistrust coexist with moments of reflection and even doubt. Kurama's behavior shows signs of this change. While he still resists full trust, he begins to engage in subtle dialogue, both internally and with Naruto. His sharp words and occasional outbursts mask an internal struggle, a battle between the defensive instincts he has long relied upon and a growing awareness that his world might be broader than mere conflict. This mental shift can be compared to how trauma survivors sometimes build complex defense mechanisms. On the surface, these defenses can appear harsh or unyielding, but underneath lies an intricate system designed to keep painful feelings at bay while allowing cautious exploration of safety. Scientific studies in psychology explain that the brain, when faced with long-term trauma, adapts by creating mental schemas, patterns of thinking that help make sense of experiences but can also limit emotional growth if too rigid. Kurama's mindset illustrates this. He has developed a schema of mistrust towards humans, but is beginning to test its boundaries. Within this evolving state, Kurama's reflections reveal a being capable of profound insight. He questions the nature of his own anger, the meaning of freedom, and the possibility of coexistence. His attitude is no longer one-dimensional. It is layered with doubts and hopes. These moments allow the audience to see beyond the villain label. Kurama's mind is a complex landscape where fear, pain, and resilience intertwine. He embodies the tension between destruction and the desire for peace, a duality that makes his character deeply human in essence. Yet, despite these signs of growth, Kurama's darker impulses remain powerful. The tension within him simmers beneath the surface, threatening to resurface at any moment. This inner conflict builds suspense and prepares us for what comes next. And so, as Kurama's mind reshapes itself, the story warns us, the greatest challenge is not the external enemy, but the battle within. The true struggle for Kurama, and for all of us, is to face the shadows inside without losing the light. But the real force lurking beneath was still asleep. There is a critical moment in Kurama's journey where his world changes irreversibly, a moment that marks the crossing of the point of no return. Up until now, his life had been shaped by pain, mistrust, and defensive anger. But at this turning point, everything he believed about himself and the world around him begins to shift. From a psychological standpoint, this phase reveals a profound transformation in Kurama's worldview. The fierce rage and bitterness that once completely defined him start to coexist with emerging self-awareness and reflection. He begins to question the foundation of his own identity, the motivations behind his actions, and the very meaning of his existence. This internal upheaval brings to light complex moral dilemmas. Kurama is forced to confront the consequences of his past, actions driven by survival instincts and deep resentment. He wonders, was his anger merely a protective shield, or has it become a prison of its own? Could letting go of his bitterness mean losing a part of himself, or is it the only path to genuine freedom? These questions reflect a universal struggle faced by many who have endured deep emotional trauma. The tension between holding on to pain as a core part of identity and embracing vulnerability and change is difficult and often confusing. Kurama's journey captures this struggle with raw honesty. In this moment, Kurama's perspective also challenges us as viewers. What if the actions we consider wrong have their own internal logic and purpose? What if his fierce resistance and harsh judgments are actually attempts to protect himself from further harm? Could his enemy label be an oversimplification of a complex being shaped by centuries of fear and isolation? This stage invites a deeper reflection on the nature of morality and ethics. It blurs the clear lines between good and evil, encouraging empathy and understanding rather than judgment. The question becomes, how do we define right and wrong when seen through the lens of someone shaped by pain and survival? Kurama's evolving conscience is reflected in his relationship with Naruto, a living challenge to his old beliefs. Naruto represents hope, patience, and the possibility that trust can overcome even the deepest wounds. Their bond becomes a mirror for Kurama's own internal conflict, showing that change is possible but never easy. Yet, even as Kurama takes these tentative steps forward, the ultimate question remains. When faced with his greatest challenge, what choice will he make? Will he cling to his old ways or embrace the uncertain path of transformation? And perhaps the most disturbing thought, what if, from Kurama's perspective, his choices are the only ones that make sense? What if he is right? Kurama's journey is not just a story of conflict. It is a profound psychological transformation, a shift from raw instinct to calculated awareness. To understand this evolution, we must delve into the mind behind the fury and examine the logic that drives his actions. At first glance, Kurama's behavior might seem purely reactive, a force of nature responding with rage to threats. But beneath the surface lies a complex cognitive process shaped by survival, fear, and the need to assert control. Psychologists explain that individuals who experience long-term trauma often develop adaptive behaviors that, while appearing harsh or aggressive, are rooted in self-preservation. Studies in trauma psychology show that hypervigilance and emotional regulation challenges are common responses to prolonged stress and isolation. Kurama's initial hostility can be understood as a form of protective vigilance, a way to prevent further harm by keeping others at a distance. This logic of self-defense, although harsh, is consistent with many real-world examples of trauma survivors who must navigate a world perceived as dangerous. Yet, as Kurama's relationship with Naruto deepens, this defensive logic begins to shift. The process resembles therapeutic models of recovery, where trust is slowly rebuilt through consistent positive interactions. Kurama learns that cooperation and connection can be more powerful than conflict, and that vulnerability does not necessarily lead to pain. In this light, Kurama's destructive actions are not mindless chaos, but calculated responses shaped by past experiences. His fury is a language, a way to express pain, fear, and the desire to protect what he holds dear. This reframing challenges the simplistic view of evil and invites us to see his behavior as a survival strategy. Comparisons to other characters in literature and psychology reveal similar patterns. Figures, initially seen as antagonists, who reveal depth and rationality when viewed through a psychological lens. These narratives remind us that transformation is possible when understanding replaces judgment. Ultimately, Kurama's evolution teaches a powerful lesson. What may appear as chaos or rage often has an underlying reason, a cold, deliberate calculation to survive and protect. This insight encourages empathy and challenges us to look deeper into those we might be quick to condemn. Not madness, not chaos. Careful calculation born from pain and resilience. After a long journey marked by pain, struggle, and transformation, what remains of Kurama? The powerful Ninetales is no longer just a creature of wrath, but a symbol of change, resilience, and the complexity of identity. Kurama's legacy extends beyond his own existence. Through his evolving bond with Naruto, he challenges the rigid boundaries between monster and hero, enemy and ally. His story invites us to reconsider how we view those who are misunderstood or feared, reminding us that beneath every fierce exterior lies a history shaped by experience and emotion. This transformation also reflects a broader truth about human nature, that change is possible even after deep wounds. Kurama's journey shows that trust and respect can build bridges where once there were walls. It illustrates how empathy can reshape relationships and how understanding can heal even the most enduring pain. Philosophically, Kurama's story raises profound questions about judgment and identity. Who are we to label others as good or bad when every being carries a complex mixture of light and shadow? How do we reconcile the parts of ourselves that resist change with the desire to grow? His legacy also warns of the cycles that repeat when pain goes unrecognized or unhealed. The scars of rejection and isolation can echo through generations, but so can the possibilities of forgiveness and growth. In the end, Kurama's tale is not simply one of anger or conflict. It is a reflection of all beings caught between fear and hope, past and future, destruction and renewal. And perhaps the greatest mystery remains. If Kurama's story can change, what about ours? Maybe he was not the last.